This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Coming up on This Week in Agribusiness, farmers take advantage of downtime ahead of the Christmas holidays to get together. Hello everyone, thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. In this crowded meeting season, farmer cooperatives are among the groups gathering together. Our own Max Armstrong was in Columbia, Missouri for the annual meeting of MFA Oil. He appeared on that program with Missouri's Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe. Both were well received by the several hundred co-op member owners in attendance. MFA Oil President and CEO John Eiler spoke with Max about the cooperative's performance in its 93rd year.
It's been a really good year for MFA Oil Company and the cooperative. We've had a couple good years that we've been able to string together here, but energy markets have been good. And I think MFA Oil, through its membership, has been able to deliver the service and the quality and the products that our customers expect on us to deliver. And so I think that's who we really are. We're really a centralized co-op that's really a retail provider of production agriculture. And so through our relationships and our connections with our producers and our owner members, we're able to serve them in the way that they wish to be served. And we want to be able to enhance what we do every day. We're similar to most businesses out there where we're trying to get better and trying to find new ways of providing the services that the producers need and get ahead of them so we can always be there for them.
We target a lot of residential propane customers that depend on MFA oil to make sure that their houses stay warm in the wintertime. Obviously, poultry and hog production is a big component of our business when it comes to propane. We try to make sure we take care of our customers no matter what industry they're involved in.
Keeping the animals comfortable as well as the humans.
Absolutely. We also provide fuel to farmers who have lots of trucks that are going up and down the road, make sure that they have the fuel that they need to keep their commodities flowing.
That was Glenn Cope, chairman of the board of MFA Oil. He's a cattle rancher at Aurora, Missouri, and he's been involved in Missouri agriculture for several years. One topic that comes up a lot at these farm meetings is soil health. A new partnership by a group of agricultural producers called Farmers for Soil Health is out there helping farmers navigate this issue. I talked to Jack Cornell about how they're doing that.
Farmers for Soil Health was this idea where we actually partnered with the Pork Checkoff and the National Corn Growers, and we're like, we need to work together on sustainability. What does that look like? And then there was an opportunity within the Partnership for Climate Smart Commodity Grants where we were actually able to create Farmers for Soil Health, which we were awarded $95 million to help farmers with the goal of not only putting on cover crops, but also other conservation practices.
Okay, and it is a big bucket. When we're thinking about conservation and sustainability in 2023, there are a million different programs out there, a million different rewards and all these sorts of things. How does Farmers for Soil Health make sense to a grower?
Right, so obviously we know there's a lot of competition for farmers, and so our idea was, how can we find the best program to de-risk farmers taking on new conservation practices and then also make a very farmer-centric program? And obviously, as commodity organizations kind of being the ones kind of overseeing this, is that we have the ultimate, our stakeholders, they control our programs. And so we've created a program where we're looking at, of that $95 million, $70 million is going directly to farmers to implement these practices. And then there's another $20 million where we're actually providing technical assistance to help farmers navigate how to get that $70 million, and then also help them to navigate other climate smart commodity programs.
So you mentioned for farmers to capitalize on these practices, it oftentimes costs money to make those changes. What sort of practices come to mind? You mentioned cover crops. Is that chief strategy?
Yeah, so we have a cost share program. We have a descending cost share program for $50 per acre for the first 3 years you are adopting new cover crop practices, which is 25, 15, 10. We also have a $2 cost share for farmers that have already done cover crops. And so one of the things that's in addition to this is that we're developing a marketplace. And this marketplace is actually could add profitability and premiums to the practices that you're doing on farm. And so we're connecting, the CPG companies, these other big store companies directly to the farmer, and where we're allowing the farmer and those companies to actually negotiate openly with each other to figure out what a price should be for them to take on some of these conservation practices on their farm.
Jack, how many growers have worked through the partnership so far?
Well, so we're still in the early stages. We actually are still signing up farmers until the end of February. And so if you planted cover crops this fall, you can actually go to farmersforsoilhealth.com, and there's an Enroll Now button. If you need technical assistance, based off of whatever your zip code is that technical assistance advisor will be on the website with their phone number that you can connect to. And so those are the people that will help you kind of navigate the system to help you figure out, what's the best plan to unlock some of this potential profitability for you.
There is certainly a lot of information out there when you're looking at improving your soil health. So if you want more resources, again, their website is farmersforsoilhealth.com. Today's larger, heavier equipment can lead to more soil compaction issues. Firestone Ag IF-VF tires with AD2 technology maximize load capacity while minimizing soil compaction. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more. Now it's time to dive into the markets. Conversations lately have been focused on what to expect out of South America as their growing season unfolds. And joining us this week to help make sense of that is Pedro Daneca. He's co-founder and partner at MD Commodities. Pedro, thanks for joining us this week.
Absolutely, Mike. Pleasure being here with all of you.
Let's start with the basics. We've heard a lot of talk about the size of Brazil's soybean crop. Pedro, fill us in. How big on a historical basis is this year's crop expected to be in Brazil?
Well, so, a lot of debate on that right now, Mike. And, the viewers probably are going to have varying opinions. And one thing that complicates matters when you're talking about South American agriculture is that there are a lot of so-called experts that really, I have to say, Mike, don't understand a thing about South American agriculture. They like to pretend that they know what they're talking about and are writing or talking about it or posting on social media things that maybe the American viewer or really the international viewer. I travel the world doing speeches on South American agriculture, macroeconomics and things like that. And I usually try to speak only on the things that I feel that I'm quite comfortable speaking of, right? So the problem is there's a lot of misinformation out there. So let's dot the I's and cross the T's, if you will. The initial potential for the Brazilian soybean crop this year was right around 175 million metric tons. Now, I want to speak in million metric tons, but the situation right now is that we've had a historic drought in the state of Mato Grosso. Just to put it in perspective, the state of Mato Grosso is responsible produces more soybeans than Iowa, Illinois, and half of Minnesota put together, right? So it is the largest soybean producing state in the world. The drought that has already impacted the crop in the state has happened at an early stage. So there's varying degrees of, the varying stages of planting in Brazil in different regions, okay? So in our view right now, we can really cut about 15 to 20 million metric tons from that initial estimate of about 175 million metric tons. Now, the problem for a lot of people is that they take the initial number that the USDA put out, which was 163 million metric tons. And then they try to take whatever is happening with the drought in Brazil off of that number, 163. And that's just flat out wrong. The same way that this year in the United States, everybody tried to kill the US crop, corn crop, soybean crop. And, when the combines got in the fields, we realized that the numbers were a lot higher than everybody was, or a lot of people were talking about, because the starting point is the key. Yeah. We have to understand that the USDA and CONAB, which is basically the USDA equivalent in Brazil, they use an average when they're trying to estimate initial potential. They're not going to put max potential for the crop. So all in all, Mike, last year, Brazil produced a record crop of about 160 million metric tons. The prior year was 130 million metric tons. So this year, even with the drought, even with the issues that we've had, also remember that Brazil is just now finishing planting. right? So the drought has happened in the early stage soybeans that get planted to give place to corn, to give place to cotton in Brazil. So there's a lot of moving parts here. At this point, the potential of the crop is still around 155 to 160 million metric tons. In other words, very close to the record production that we had last year.
All right, Pedro, lots to think about as we're looking down in South America. We also had a presidential election recently in Argentina. Folks, stay with us. We'll be back for more with Pedro Deneca, and we'll talk about these issues. Today's larger, heavier equipment can lead to more soil compaction issues. Firestone Ag IFVF tires with 82 technology maximize load capacity while minimizing soil compaction. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more. And we're back talking specifically what's developing in South America with Pedro Deneca, co-founder and partner at MD Commodities. Pedro, you mentioned the drought could have an impact, but it sounds as though we're still set up for a pretty good-sized crop out of Brazil.
So far, Mark, that's correct. So far, despite the historic drought, the historic issues, and don't get me wrong, the issues have been extremely bad for some parts of Mato Grosso. So we're already taking, like I said, 15 to 20 million metric tons off the top end in production. But yes, right now, Brazil is just finishing planting. So you're looking at last half of December, January, and early part of February. That is what's going to dictate. That's going to be the equivalent to, say, July and first half of August to dictate the actual size of the Brazilian crop. So for right now, the potential is still for a very, very large crop, but we must watch the weather in this next 6 to 8 weeks, or maybe 6 to 10 weeks.
All right, lots to come there for that crop. Pedro, let's go a little farther south into the country of Argentina. Suffered through a tremendous drought last year, had a presidential election. Things are changing. What do you expect to see coming out of that country?
Listen, the Argentinians, I tell you what, they have been incredibly blessed here in the last few months. They're very optimistic. They started winning the World Cup last year. You know, they were incredibly excited. Soccer World Cup for those that don't follow, but, you know, for them, that's a huge deal. Now it looks like they have outstanding weather, and if things continue this way, their production is going to rebound strongly. And also their elections. I mean, the Argentinian farmers are extremely happy, incredibly happy with the result of the elections, because it looks like this candidate, Milei, is going to bring about some reforms to help the country, hopefully, get back up off the ground. Now, again, promises are one thing. Let's see what actually happens. And Argentina has probably another 12 to 18 rough months ahead, 12 to 24 rough months ahead, as they institute policies right now that are going to be painful in the short term, economically speaking, but hopefully in the mid to long term are going to benefit the country. Now, specifically in agriculture, we've had already the announcement that the exchange rate that the farmer is getting for their beans and corn and, you know, whatever commodities they decide to export, they're receiving a lot more pesos, a lot more local currency for their exports right now. So that is going to be a plus. We expect the Argentinian farmer to start moving more grain out to the market, specifically talking about corn, soybeans, and one thing, we obviously meal. Argentina is a huge meal exporter, but we must talk about the corn situation next year. If Argentinian production rebounds to 50 to 55 million metric tons, Argentina next year could be fighting with the U.S. for second place in world exports. Brazil staying at as the first place in world exports. Argentina and U.S. very, very close second. So Argentina is really inching up, and they could become a major player in the next few years, even more than they used to be due to these political changes.
Pedro, you mentioned the corn crop in Brazil. They're going to be lead exporter yet again. Do we have a sense as to what's been impacted on that safrinha crop yet with the dryness?
We're definitely going to be down, in our opinion. Last year, total production was 137 million metric tons. Us at MD Commodities, or we at MD Commodities, have already taken that estimate down sub 120. Again, it's early. Mike, you have to remember that safrinha corn, which is the second corn crop that only gets planted in February and March and gets harvested, you know, June, July, etc. So it's too early to talk about that. But what we can say is that the window for planting is not going to be ideal due to the delay in soybean planting. So we're now sub 120, and then we have to wait and see what weather does specifically in the last part of March, April, and first half of May before we can dictate the size of the Brazilian crop. and obviously then dictate the size of Brazil exports. But the export situation next year could be very tight, could be a tight race between Argentina, Brazil, and United States.
Lots to watch coming out of South America. American growers need to take notice. Pedro Daneca, MD Commodities, thanks for joining us this week.
My pleasure, Mike.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by Copperhead Ag Products. Visit copperheadag.com for more information. As we get deeper into December, many farmers have wrapped up their fall tillage work. Chad Colby's looking ahead to how tillage could look different by next year.
You know, one of my favorite places at the Farm Progress Show is always the tillage area. And the reason why, for me personally, it's because you get an opportunity to walk around new tillage tools in the field, and for a lot of us, for the very first time. This is Degelman's new HDSR tillage tool. The SR stands for Staggered Ripper. And as you can see here in this video taken recently in Central Illinois, it's got a staggered row of shanks. Now, it's a Degelman tool, so it's going to have the heritage of Degelman. Extremely overbuilt, lots of clearance under the frame that they're known for. It's truly greaseless. There are no grease zerks on the machine, and there's a lot of interesting options. Shanks especially, widths of 20-inch up to 30, lots of different points, lots to talk about there. They also have their unique leveling system, and essentially hook it onto your tractor and it'll auto level that machine when you put it in and out of the ground, which I honestly really like, especially when you're putting it on different tractors. In the field, the farmers that I talked to that used it really liked it, especially with that lot of room for trash to get through, which is pretty amazing. Lots of options. They do make a rolling basket on the back. This video clip right here, it doesn't have that. It's got their very simple depth control, which is fantastic. And another great option too that you can get on the model for 24 along with that basket in the back, but you can get hydraulic shanks instead of the standard spring. And what the folks at Degelman told me is that hydraulic is really slick because it gives more pressure, but it also gives you some protection if you've got some rocky areas. And as you can see here, it folds up super narrow. And get this, it even comes completely assembled from the factory. These are going to be available this coming fall, so you will see them in the field. Just another great new tillage tool on the market. I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad. And folks, stay with us. Later on in the program, we're going to be visiting with our friends from the Illinois Soybean Association, who recently honored their Impact Award winners. We'll have that story later in the program.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Pentair Hypro, a global leader in innovative spray technology for farmers for over 75 years.
Yes, it's December. For a lot of growers, that means the machinery has been put away in the shed after being power washed a final time. And now it's time to sit at our desk, go through our paperwork, reflect on the outcomes of this past year, and plan ahead to the next growing season. Our own Lainey Beetsma recently had the chance to talk with Jeff Hartz of Croplan about how those folks anticipate 2024 to look as it comes into focus for seed retail.
Jeff, we know that farmers have many options when considering what seed they want to put in their fields. Thanks for joining us today to help go through all of that data. Jeff, you are with Cropland. Tell us a little bit about what you do there and your role.
Yep, my role is the brand manager of Cropland. I help manage our corn and soybean business. So we are an independent seed brand, and we are somewhat unique in that we also focus exclusively on retail, and that's our preferred method to go to market.
So how does that prove to be helpful for farmers when working with an independent seed company?
Well, the independent part is important because I think we're in a really unique position in the marketplace, and that we're able to really look with more of an independent mindset across the industry and determine what we think will serve farmers and the growers we work with best. So that's one part of it, and I think there are a number of companies that could say that, but I would think the other part that's really unique about Cropland is that we focus exclusively on the retail channel. And as we look at what's going on in the seed industry, we feel like the retail channel is going to be more and more important every day. I mean, the seed decision today cannot be a one-dimensional decision. So we look at the retailer as being the expert that understands all the other products and all the other complex agronomic decisions that need to be made on that acre.
Definitely many players in the seed industry. Looking forward to 2024, what's in the lineup? What are you excited about?
Yeah, that's an interesting question right now because like most seed companies, we're in the middle of product advancement right now for the new products that would be available in 2024. So we've just commercialized at Cropland 15 new corn products that we're super excited about. Relative maturities from 82 to 116 days. So we've got a pretty broad lineup of new products coming to market, all with some production behind them. So it's a great opportunity for the growers we work with and the retailers we work with to get a chance to sample these products in their local environments on their acres and get a really good look at what's going to be the future of our brand.
Helping farmers with their whole farmer and ground perspective. Where do you guys come into play with that?
Well, that's probably the biggest thing with Cropland and why we feel like it's a really an advantage to work with Cropland, in that, again, we focus exclusively through that retail channel. And we know that the way to be most successful today is not to make a one-dimensional seed decision. It's to make a decision in context of all the other really tough agronomic decisions that need to be made on that acre. And so, again, the retailer and the retailers we work with are experts in crop fertility. They understand the products that you need to protect your crop from a whole variety of, whether it's bugs or weeds or whatever it is. And then, of course, there's fungicide decisions. There are a lot of decisions that have to be made, and making a seed decision without the context of those other really important decisions is a little risky today.
What are you most looking forward to as we move into this new year?
I think, again, probably the most exciting thing right now are some really exciting new products we've got coming to market. So we're super excited to get those out into the marketplace and kind of trial quantities and give growers an opportunity to see how these products are going to perform in their local areas under their many diverse environmental conditions. We're really confident with the testing we've got behind them that we're going to be in a really good situation when those get to market. So that's a really exciting thing right now.
Jeff, if someone wants to continue this conversation and also learn more about Cropland, how can they do that?
Well, certainly you can go to the website, cropland.com, but I would also say probably the best thing to do would be to talk to your local retailer. Again, they've got a lot of information, a lot of background in our products and all the other products that you need to be successful.
Jeff, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Lainey. Really appreciate that conversation. And, I mentioned December is a time for paperwork on the farm, but of course that's not all. There's also a number of holidays in the December month, notably Christmas. These are chances for small towns to really come back to life as families return. Maybe they've left the town, left the farm. They come back at the Christmas season, drawn by the warmth in those churches and the communities that they've inspired. Well, next week, of course, is the Christmas program here on This Week in Agribusiness, and Max has been out touring those small town churches. For this year's show, he had the chance to visit several different communities and talk about the ministries in each one. We're going to begin by visiting Columbus, Indiana. Max went to the St. Paul Lutheran Church. He learned about the history of that church, the community, and importantly, there at St. Paul Lutheran, the pipe organ, the centerpiece of that church's music ministry all year round, and it takes center stage during the Christmas holiday. Then he and our production team traveled out to Perry County, Missouri, where they had the chance to visit 3 churches. St. Rose of Lima Catholic Church was on the list. Same question, learning about the history of these churches. They also went to Pocahontas, Missouri, to the Apple Creek Presbyterian Church. Now, this is a church that we don't find very often in these big cities. That's a small church heated with wood stoves and still an active part of that community's faith. And then, of course, they went to Concordia Lutheran in Frona, Missouri. Look at that ornate structure. Folks, Christmas time is a magical season here for small communities and for American agriculture. We hope you will join us and Max Armstrong for our Christmas show next week. Do be sure to join us here for This Week in Agribusiness.
This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. The Illinois agriculture industry would not be where it is today without the hard work, time, and efforts put forth by passionate leaders. In appreciation of those leaders' efforts, the Illinois Soybean Association created its annual Achievement Awards to recognize those individuals who have made Illinois agriculture stronger. The 5 Achievement Award winners were recently recognized for their contributions to the Illinois ag industry at the annual ISA Impact Awards banquet. This year's honorees include Dr. Robert Easter, President Emeritus for the University of Illinois. Dr. Easter was bestowed with the association's highest honor, the Chairman's Award, in celebration of his lifelong dedication, leadership, and significant agricultural impact.
It's one of those career recognition by a group that you really respect, that your career has meant something, and that's humbling. It really is.
Farm Progress's own Holly Spangler was honored with the Excellence in Media Award for her work in sharing the stories of Illinois soybeans and the farm families who grow them.
I think it's always an honor to be recognized by people who I would consider my peers, and I say that a little bit as a farmer. You know, thinking about as a member of the Illinois Soybean Association and the farmers that make up that board and that organization, it's nice to be thought of that way.
Leanne Kasner and Matthew Clavin of Clavin Family Farms were honored as the Farm Family of the Year for going above and beyond in their involvement, advocacy, and community engagement efforts through ISA's membership program.
I think it's important to educate people on farming and agriculture, and that's all I was doing, and I was recognized for that.
The Friend of Illinois Soybean Farmers Award went to Dr. Gary Schnitke. He was recognized for his research that informs and encourages farmers to make long-term changes to boost yield and profitability.
I got here in Illinois in 1998 and almost immediately began working with Illinois Soybean Association in one form or another, and just to be recognized for, you know, the contributions that I helpfully made to Illinois farmers and Illinois Soybean Association is a very nice thing.
Congressman Mike Bost, who represents Illinois' 12th District in the U.S. House of Representatives, was named ISA's Legislator of the Year for his role in advocating for policies and addressing issues Illinois soybean farmers are facing. Altogether, the ISA Achievement Awards honor some of the remarkable people who serve Illinois soy through their areas of professional expertise and symbolize the collective efforts to drive growth and prosperity in the soybean industry. Congratulations to this year's deserving honorees.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Well, it's time to dig into that forecast with meteorologist Greg Solier. Greg, looking out to the west coast, I know that El Nino is having an impact. What's it going to do this next week?
Well, finally back into a little more typical El Nino setup as it applies to California. They've been on the shorter side of the rain gauge and the snow ledger here so far this wintertime season. It is the wet and rainy season and snowy season out there. Little, if any, drought, so it's time to get some recharge going into California. We've had it early and often, a break, and then, of course, the past week to 10 days into the Pacific Northwest. By early in the week, here is the next setup. Jet stream in onshore, nice upper air trough, downwind, wind, and still a very mild weather pattern, except for the cold last week across North Dakota, the southern Canadian prairie, where there's been snow on the ground. Not much snow going on the ground here in the foreseeable future. This weather system in the northwest will slowly work inland. One system here, another one offshore. So again, typical amounts of moisture and coverages and weather business in the Pacific Northwest, as you would expect for this El Nino setup. Again, downwind, still some mild air, but we'll get a little rain-snow combination going here, and keep an eye on your step and your hoof accordingly. Some sloppy feedlots with snow melt and that aforementioned moisture across the northern plains by the middle to late portions of the week. Here is the vanguard of that pattern shift offshore across California. A couple of showers into the Bay Area. Pretty quiet weather pattern in the desert southwest. They are wrapping up cotton harvest in through Arizona. Delightful go of it here across the central and southern plains coming off last week's rain and snow. That certainly put a little bit of a dent in through New Mexico, Colorado, and Kansas and Oklahoma's drought weather pattern into West Texas cotton as well, but a nice recovery early in the week. Later in the week, the system slowly winds up off of the Bay Area all the way down into Southern California, the San Joaquin Valley. Frost last week, rain this week, and that weather system will expand north and eastward across the mountains of the Southwest. So some good news and good coverage moisture expected as the week wears on. A couple of showers and thunderstorms and a windy warm-up over still some of the worst drought areas of Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas coming off recent moisture.
Greg, you mentioned drought, dryness still in place across the central part of the United States. Any relief in the coming week?
Probably in the next week or so. Don't think so. Down the line, I think, as we get deeper into the new year in January, I think we'll begin to get something a little more realistic for a winter weather pattern and maybe some additional snowfall on the ground. By the way, snow cover across the continental United States, less than 25%, hasn't been that low since 2016, the bulk of which has been up across North Dakota. And of course, we've had winter early and often over the northeast of New England. Weak system, a couple of sprinkles and snowflakes, and still a very comfortable outdoor work scene over much of the heartland and the Corn Belt locales early in the week. Hopefully crossing the T's and dotting the I's on harvest through the northern and far eastern Corn Belt, and still a nice window of opportunity late in the week. Well, note the complexity of weather here across the plains and as the sections of the western Corn Belt boundary here. Jet stream winds in from the south and southwest, at least some moisture, rain and snow, and some sloppy feedlots getting going, but the moisture appreciated for the drought areas of the Great Plains over the middle to late portions of the week. Again, some nice snowfall over the western reaches of Kansas and Oklahoma, rain as well, and that weather system is out, the one that really is making its way up the eastern seaboard currently, with a fair amount of December sunshine and warmth, if you will, over the central and southern plains into the lower Mississippi Valley. This is the worst of the deep south, dry and drought-ridden areas of the country, but looky here, as the week wears on, next weather system coming in through West Texas, moisture begins to pick on up, and hopefully later in the week, some opportunity, Mike, for some additional moisture in through the lower Mississippi Valley and Delta region.
Greg, you mentioned that New England has seen winter already. Is there more snow on order for those folks?
Oh, there's a healthy one. Not quite your classic, typical nor'easter, but if it walks and talks like one, might as well forecast it. And here it is. Around the nation's capital had some snowfall there last week, and here's this transition, an abrupt one from rain over to snow back into Pennsylvania. And on northward, this will be a doozy of a one with already a bunch of snow on the ground. Its far western flank into parts of Ohio with a rain-snow mix, some cooler to colder air, more seasonal, but a quiet go of it through the Midwest into the western Corn Belt locales. That East Coast storm is out. The cold air is over the snowpack. A lot of sub-zero cold of late north of the St. Lawrence River Valley. And here's the next weather system with a little snow and rain. No big deal, but it will complicate footing issues over the western Corn Belt late portions of the week. This is a winder-upper to greet the new week with snow all the way as far south as the Georgia mountains early in the week. Watch the rain to snow. Piedmont on westward. Windy, cooler weather in through Florida with a thunderstorm in the Keys. Next weather system into the Gulf Coast area, whereas the week wears on, some shower activity through eastern Texas is anticipated, back to high pressure over the southeast.
Greg Solier is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Well, Greg Solier's looking out to the week ahead. And Greg, it sounds like we're going to see some precipitation next week. Who's going to get it?
Yeah, some into the plains, some into the western Corn Belt. Of course, we're seeing the latest storm wind its way up the eastern seaboard, winter early and often, and boy, plenty of it here. Early in the week, melted down what's left of it, a quarter to half inch, but several inches to heavy snow into the northeast of New England. The snow line all the way down into perhaps the southern Appalachians. We'll get into another round of late week moisture into parts of Texas and the lower Mississippi Valley late in the week into parts of the western Corn Belt. Conceivable, an inch or two may come on down. Lower Mississippi Valley region, we'll take it here. Here's the average rain snow line, which is well to the north for December. Significant moisture to the Pacific Northwest and down to the valleys of California. And welcome to wintertime, Mike, as of the 21st, a little before 9:30 in the evening.
Well, Greg, speaking of winter, does it feel like winter that week between Christmas and New Year's?
Not really. The cold air has been lacking in all but areas of the southeastern sections of the Canadian Prairie up towards the Hudson Hudson Bay, James Bay area, but even here some moderation of temperatures expected. The last of the warm ridge over this part of the country easing to the east and northeast. A fair amount of warmth for the time of year. Not much real cold air to speak of. The Arctic air well to the north, so a pretty easy go of it here for the waning week of 2023. The precipitation pattern is good for the Pacific Northwest, California, into the upper Midwest, northern plains. Probably snow, but what do you expect for late December? Normal precip for a change. So a little more action for the central and northern Corn Belt. Back to dry time and a quiet weather picture for the northeast and New England, down through Florida, the lower Mississippi Valley, and by then, they'll need it.
And then it's 2024. Greg, what do you see that first week of the new year?
And into the Happy New Year mode we go around here. And maybe you're not necessarily happy about this. We told you this is not your typical walk and talk El Nino setup. We will get these prods and pushes of cold and winter storminess and more of them as we get deeper on into the winter season. But here's a pretty good slug of cold across the heartland of the western states. The warmth and an active jet stream pattern from southwest to northeast. And anytime you see this U-shaped configuration, winds are strong. They're shifting up aloft. There's a wide range of temperatures, and you're going to eke out moisture in one form or another. That'll be probably a pretty healthy snow or two for the northern and western Corn Belt, northern and central plains. Dry time over the southeastern part of the country. More probably mishmash of moisture in the northeast and New England, including some snow melt, and above average moisture for northern California and the Pacific Northwest. So some busyness as we get into the new year across much of the country.
Well, take us through, if you would, Greg, through January 14th.
And as we see it right now, the cold air locked in, but kind of retrograding and lifting north and northeastward, so it's a progressive weather pattern. We're not early on getting locked into it. We will as we get deeper onto the winter season, but a little below average temperature-wise across a good part of the northern and western Corn Belt. Some warmth over Dixie, the mid-Atlantic region down through Florida, and a little separate area across the western reaches of the country. But again, that trough is still in the middle part of the country. It's progressive, it's moving, and so the active storm track will do just that into Texas, the lower Mississippi Valley. Welcome news here, but this time this could mean some severe weather potential on this part of the jet stream pattern. Moisture in one form or another for the northeast of New England. Some seasonal snowfall for the upper Midwest. Back to dry time from about the Corn Palace on westward.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
Sometimes an old tractor is cherished and worthy of restoration, even if it wasn't a family tractor, but perhaps belonged to someone who you really appreciated so much. I have an example this week from Max's Tractor Shed, brought to you by Mystic Lubricants. Mystic Lubricants producers are made to make it last. We thank the folks at Mystic for making it possible for us to come your way the year round here on This Week in Agribusiness. We appreciate their participation in our program. Well, Pete Tomey is a fourth-generation farmer at Adams, Minnesota. He told me they have a farrow-to-finish swine operation there, and they are row crop producers. And Pete restored a tractor because it belonged to a neighbor who was important to him. He said the neighbor used this Farmall 560 throughout his years of farming, and then in later years, the gentleman farmed with the Tomey family and was just like an uncle to him, Pete said. Well, Pete was able to rescue this tractor to keep it from going to the auction yard after the neighbor passed away, and he thought it was worthy of a restoration, and as you can see, it did indeed get a very nice restoration. I think it's there at home for a while. Thanks to Pete Tomey at Adams, Minnesota. Thanks to Pete for watching us each week. Mark Stock is with us every week, to be sure. Here he is with his update for what's going on at the big iron auctions. They even work through the holidays.
Well, hello, Max. It's the week before Christmas, and boy, do we have a bunch of opportunities to get your Christmas presents purchased. December the 18th, United Excavating and General Contracting, Inc. out of Montgomery, Indiana, will sell some really nice Caterpillar construction equipment. December 19th, Roger Peterson is retiring. Their equipment, folks, in Iowa is very nice. The Harris Cooper Estate is also December the 19th in Williamson, Iowa. December 20th, Clint Ratkovics from Brainerd, Nebraska will sell a John Deere 9530 four-wheel drive tractor. December the 20th, Equipment Wholesalers in Meade, Nebraska will sell a John Deere S670 combine and many more items. December 21st, Mark's Farms, Inc. They will retire from West Salem, Illinois. December 22nd, Stoller International with locations across Illinois will sell late model Case IH equipment. December 22nd, Dan Tingle is retiring their equipment located in Arizona. Happy holidays from Big Iron Auctions and Sullivan Auctioneers.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. And it's time to meet that next generation of agricultural leaders. This week, we're talking with Riley Swafford. He's the reporter for the Arkansas State FFA. Riley, thanks for taking the time to talk with us this week.
Absolutely. It's my honor to be here with you guys.
Tell me, if you would, what made FFA an attractive club to join when you were coming up?
See, I grew up in a small town where you were either in sports or you were in FFA. And I was not very good at sports, so I just kind of naturally found myself joining the organization. And after several conferences and meeting so cool people from all across the state of Arkansas, I kind of fell in love with the organization and what it had to offer for our youth.
And so, Riley, you've been serving now as a reporter. Your term's about 6 months over. What's been the highlight so far?
There's so many highlights. I actually have two for you. One highlight was just meeting all the members from the state of Arkansas, seeing how diverse Arkansas FFA and Arkansas agriculture truly is. And the second was when we got to go to Washington, D.C. and talk with our legislators about what Arkansas agriculture looks like, and that on a broad spectrum.
Was that a good conversation? Was it empowering to meet with the legislators, Riley?
I think it was empowering just to see how much support Arkansas FFA truly has, and that our legislators do see that agriculture is the backbone of our country, and I thought that was really important to see.
That's fantastic. Riley, as you look out to the rest of your term of service, what are you excited about?
There's lots that I'm excited for, but the one thing I'm just really thrilled to see is our Arkansas FFA State Convention in April. It's where all Arkansas FFA members come. They watch us put on a great show for them. We talk about our year. It's like a great recap of the 2023-2024 Arkansas FFA year.
That's fantastic. Riley, now look out a little bit. Do you hope to have a career in the ag industry?
Absolutely. So I'm going to the University of Arkansas, where I hope to get a major in agriculture, communications, and political science. I hope to use that to get a job in Washington, D.C., so I can make a positive impact within American agriculture and American agriculturalists. So
that's fantastic. Riley, we need folks who understand agriculture in D.C. We wish you the best of luck going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me.
Well, folks, before we go for the weekend, I want to look ahead to what's coming in early 2024. January 9th through the 11th at the Hyatt Regency in Coralville, Iowa, the Farm Futures Business Summit returns. And I am very excited as a lifelong Iowan to have this next interview. It is with the man who will be our opening keynote presenter on January 9th. A lot of you might recognize that face. It's Olympic gold medalist wrestler and coach, Iowan Dan Gable. Coach Gable, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us, and thanks for joining us at the Farm Futures Business Summit.
Hey, I love it.
Let's talk a little bit about how important mindset is. Coach, when you're farming and you're in the field, or when you're wrestling and you're on the mat, it's an individual action. How important is mindset to being successful?
Well, mindset to me means basically focusing on the task that needs to be accomplished. And in wrestling, it's one-on-one. And whoever has that mindset that is focused more than the other is probably going to win the match. Usually, when we got two people out there, and one's getting ready to go, then the other one's getting ready to go, the match is already over before it starts. Usually there is one mindset that is different than the other mindset. And the mindset that is stronger, that is focused, that is confident, that's usually going to be the winner. I've won almost all my matches in wrestling as an athlete and then as a coach for a team before the meet even started.
And Coach, I understand you're going to help us at the business conference bring that mindset to our farm operations. Is that the goal?
hey, I can do whatever you want me to do. I'm experienced in a lot of success, have some major trauma losses, but always have had to come back after those. But yes, I will definitely talk about the mindset of the future, of the current, the mindset that's needed to be the best. If you know, it's whatever you need. I feel like I've been through a lot of things in my career as an athlete, as a coach, as a father, you know, as a kid growing up, having people that influenced me, areas around me. And so I just feel like I got a lot of information, and I coached for 25 years, beyond wrestling for, well, all my life, I guess. I guess I'm still wrestling because that's what wrestling's all about. You know, it's a wrestling match. Life is a wrestling match. And the person that is better prepared usually wins. Not always, but usually.
It's what it's all about, setting yourself up, preparing to be that one who's successful. Folks, if you want to hear from legendary coach Dan Gable, get registered today for the Farm Futures Business Summit. Learn about it on the internet, farmfuturesbusinesssummit.com to get registered. Coach Gable, thanks so much for talking with us this week.
Hey, I lived on a farm for about 6 months, and I found out just how difficult it can be. Of course, I was only 2 years old. But my dad, I guess, found out that. So, you know, I'll share that experience.
Thank you, sir. Well, I'm excited to hear from Coach Dan Gable. As an Iowan, I tell you, he is a real celebrity in our state. I've never met anybody named after a president, but I think I've met 4 people named Gable after Coach Dan Gable. Be sure to join us January 9th through the 11th for the Farm Futures Business Summit. And folks, thank you so much for joining us here today. A reminder that next week's show is our Christmas episode exploring churches across the heartland. You don't want to miss us next week right here on This Week in Agribusiness.
This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.